But now it's time to hear from our very special guest. Bob Saget is an American stand-up comedian, actor, television host, director, and producer. Born to a Jewish family in Philadelphia, like all good Jewish boys, originally intended to become a doctor. But his English teacher saw his creative potential and urged him to seek a career in film, and has been in the showbiz ever since. Of course, Bob is best known for his television role as Danny Tanner on the classic sitcom Full House and its Netflix sequel Fuller House, but many of you will also know him as the voice of the future Ted Mosby on the hilarious sitcom How I Met Your Mother. Bob has also hosted America's Funniest Home Videos in the 90s and has performed in some incredible stand-up routine specials. But his 2014 comedy album, That's What I'm Talking About, was nominated for the Grammy Award for Best Comedy Album. Recently, just before the pandemic hit, Bob launched his very own podcast called Bob Saget's Here For You, using his show not just to talk to other comedians, but reach out and connect with fans too, including our very own CEO, Neil Martin. We are so privileged to be joined by another comedy legend and honoured Bob has found the time to speak to us despite his busy schedule. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, live all the way from Los Angeles, please welcome tonight's very special guest, Bob Saget. Good evening, Bob. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you, Abby?
I'm good, thank you.
Hi, everybody.
How have been for you, and how have you been keeping positive?
Every day I try to wake up positive, and that's before I turn on the news.
Yeah.
And so everybody's, I have three daughters in life, 33 and 31 and 27. Those are not their ages. Those are their names. We didn't give them names. We just numbered them. So I try to wake up with some humor and some positivity, even though life beats us all down, especially now. Everybody's in quarantine. If you need me to talk for 4 or 5 hours, I'm fine. I'm just going to sit here and I'll just be on the Zoom all day. But it's a pleasure to talk to so many people and so many people that are of like-minded. My whole thing is kindness. I launched the podcast because everybody has a podcast, literally everybody. I have my mail delivery person has a podcast, everyone. But I launched it. I was going to go on a tour, and I might have even come back to London. Last time I was there was at Leicester Square Theatre, and I loved it so much. And I wish I was there in quarantine with you guys. But I put out this podcast called Bob Saget's Here For You. Sorry, I used my name in a sentence, but it's very narcissistic, self-serving, and I'm not a rapper, but I did it before the pandemic hit because I wanted to help, because I was out touring mostly North America, and I was just feeling a lot of anger and racism, and I was faced with a lot of anti-Semitism as a kid. I was in Norfolk, Virginia, and it was pretty anti-Semitic. This is actually, I have a prop, but I showed it to you before we started, Abby. This is the mezuzah from my house in Norfolk, Virginia when I was a kid, and I have never opened the back. So that's my public service announcement, everyone. Never open the back of a mezuzah. That's, and I also have this because I keep it on my desk because I wish I was living there with all of you. And we could hold weekly meetings.
Yeah, that'd be great. So obviously we're so pleased to have you on our JLGB Virtual programme tonight as we celebrate 125 years of JLGB. We've been boosting positivity and keeping children and their families active, healthy and entertained for 30 solid weeks now since lockdown began here in the UK, and have been seen by over 2 million people thanks to the help of a special guest like you helping us every evening. So what made you want to join us, except for Neil, that may have pestered you a bit too much?
Neil Martin is the sweetest man, and I was recording my podcast, and we have voicemails that people sometimes leave for me on days where I call people, and Neil left this message, and I went, wow, this is a very kind man. And I called him, and he answered. I think it was late. It was like 1 a.m, or I don't know. It was off time, and he has a baby, but obviously talking to me was much more important than his child.
Yes.
And we had a lovely conversation. Then he asked me to be on this show, and I said yes immediately because it's the sweetest thing in the world to try to help people through this time. And I'm not an ageist, so I still feel like I'm almost getting bar mitzvah. I can go back. I don't talk to, having done work with a lot of young actors and actresses, I never felt, and my kids and their friends, I never felt like, oh, you're a kid and I'm the parent. I'm very childlike in many ways. I'm just not very smart. That's not what I mean. Because I look up to kids because they're just not programmed. They're not as old. But I don't know why adults sometimes diminish what they have to contribute, especially in the world that you all are inheriting, which we know is something you all care about, because you want there to be a world, and you want there to be a world for your kids. And if you choose not to have kids, your life will be easier. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But yeah, I'm just really happy to be here, and thanks for having me. And you've had friends of mine, Jeff Garland, who I love so much, from the Goldbergs, and which is a Jewish show. I don't know why you would think so with the name, and Curb Your Enthusiasm, which is a Jewish show squared, and also Phil Rosenthal, who did Everybody Loves Raymond, exec produced it, and he's a dear friend. I had lunch with him yesterday, and he was so excited I was talking to you and everybody.
So, as you would have seen earlier, we're all about acts of kindness here at JLGB, and we always ask our guests what they've been doing to help others. So, is there a particular act of kindness you've been doing to help others during the pandemic?
I try to. I have a thing where I try to treat people really well anyway. I was raised that way by my parents, and my dad was an incredibly kind guy. And so I'll just give a quick example. I hope I don't talk too long, because I want to take questions, and I'm not going anywhere. I hope you guys have nowhere to go, because I'm really lonely, and and my wife's busy, and my kids aren't here. But my dad, I was at the hospital visiting my uncle years ago. I was in my early 20s, and there was a lady in an elevator, and it was Cedars-Sinai, and she was a lady she was Jewish, a lot of Jewish customers at this hospital. And she was crying, and my dad looked at her, and it wasn't done in a strange way. He just looked at her and said, "Has anyone told you that you look lovely today?" Now, his son was standing next to him. So if you hear that today from someone go, "Well, that's creepy. Who's that creepy guy in the elevator?" But it wasn't said like that. He said it, and this is from a man who had my parents lost 4 children. So I'm the only survivor of my family. So he was coming from a place of seeing someone hurting and wanted to ease their pain. And she looked at him like she was looking at an angel, and she said, "Thank you so much." But it was basically saying, "I'm sorry for what you're going through," without those words.
Yeah.
And so that can be done with just behavior. That can be done just by saying, "Well, let me get that for you." But then you have a mask on and keep it a distance. I'll get it for you, but move away. And also consideration of the mask, and consideration of people that deny the mask of okay, you have your right to think that, but stay away from me, and let's get rid of this disease. And I guess my most recent act of kindness that helped people was, I'm a board member of the Scleroderma Research Foundation, and that's a disease hardening of the skin. And my sister had it, and she lost her life to it. And we did a telethon, not a telethon, but we did a YouTube benefit on Sunday Night Live on YouTube, and it's still up on the YouTube page, which is well, you can get to it at srfcure.org. And I had so many friends and musicians, and we raised $1.1 million for people affected. And John Mayer sang, and Kelly Clarkson, and Pat Monahan from Train, and the comedians were Jeff Garland and Bill Burr, who I love so much. And I mean, we had 20 comedians, Jack Black, and different, I mean, just Regina Hall, many people. John Stamos, he was on last, because I can't look at him too long. He's just too good looking. But we raised a lot of money, and it goes right to research. So that I would say would be my my tzedakah. My daughter one time on Halloween, which is, I don't really celebrate it, because you know, we have Purim and Sukkot, and you know, Purim is Halloween, right?
Yeah.
Right. So if I said Haman, everybody would do that.
Yeah.
So anyway, my daughter, my youngest, one time went out with a tzedakah box to collect a charity during Halloween and she wasn't in costume, and a lady in the neighborhood yelled at her, "You're supposed to be celebrating Halloween." And it's like, that's the world,
Yeah.
you can't, it's difficult. It's just a difficult world. So you guys, all the people watching this, you're the ones that can make a real difference. And I'm doing what I can and will until I'm done, and I'll never get off this Zoom.
So let's quickly go back to the very beginning, if I may, about your childhood growing up Jewish. Did you have any youth opportunities, like I have JLGB, that helped shape you? Did you go to a Jewish summer camp or get bar mitzvah? Did your Jewish family or identity help to shape your values to who you are today?
I was shaped by it, and it kind of held me together as a kid. My fondest memories actually were Hebrew school, where I got into a lot of trouble, and I was just trying to make everybody laugh, and I tortured some of my Hebrew teachers, and they know that I'm sorry. I was a mischievous kid, but that was actually fun for me after school, especially because I was in Norfolk, Virginia, where there weren't a lot of Jewish people.
Yeah.
So it felt good to be with people that were of my same faith, and we looked more like we were related, which is not saying that the whole world should be united, all human beings. Yeah. But there's something about being with people that are before we started, and I shouldn't say this, Abby, but I was talking to your mom for a quick second as she flashed by, and I said, if you go back far enough, we're all related. It's some village in Russia where we're escaping, like the end of Fiddler on the Roof, which I highly recommend you see the movie. And my kids were in one of the little shows of it. Anyway, it's nice when my daughter played Muttle the tailor, but bar mitzvah was hard for me because I lived in Norfolk, Virginia, but I got bar mitzvahed in Philadelphia. So I had no friends at my bar mitzvah, just family, which was nice, but I missed my friends. So, and then I moved. So I moved a lot. So that was difficult. I didn't have what I would assume a lot of you had that experience, which was to be able to have that. And there's something I do when I do a lot of benefits for the Jewish Federation and worldwide. I've done a lot of things affiliated with it. And I've been to Israel for the Ministry of Tourism, and I love when something like this, if you guys can answer, I don't know if you're all muted, but I always do this because everybody seems to answer. If I go, Baruch Hu Adonai Hamborach.
They are all muted, unfortunately.
They're muted, but they would all do the. That's our code. That's our code to be careful. No one's anti-Semitic, but it's a fun thing when I do some benefit somewhere and I'm going to give a serious speech and I do that and like 3,000 people chanted back to me when we're over this pandemic. Oh my, what a time. But my roots have helped me a lot. And I believe in any faith that helps people believe in goodness and kindness. I'm a lover of all goodness, but Jewish roots are important. And about 5 years ago, I had to dye them just in the crown. I had to dye my Jewish roots because I turned gray up. I have a gray yarmulke. So people go, oh, you dye your hair, right? I'm like, no, I don't. I don't dye any of this, but my Jewish roots right here, it's literally a yarmulke of gray, and I'm not going to show it, but I have to have it tinted to be the color of the rest of my head because I have hair. It's just like the soybean noodles. It's like clear noodles or whatever you call them. I have like a little lo mein in the middle of my my cup.
So were you always drawn to arts and entertainment, and where does your creative streak come from? And is it true that you were originally planning to be a doctor?
Yeah. I'm sorry I woke him up. Hi, Louis. Are you okay? I want to see Louis again. Oh, Louis. What's wrong, Louis? I don't want to bore you. Are you all right? Is Louis doing okay? I'm worried about Louis. Okay. Because when you go and you see on a Zoom and someone's like, it's like Louis didn't have enough sleep, or he has a cold and he's on NyQuil. I get it. I hear you. But at least your clothes are drying behind you. Didn't think I'd be in show business.
Yeah.
And I was just talking about this yesterday. I was 9 years old and I picked up an 8mm camera, which was film. And then at 11, they had Super 8, which is that movie by J.J. Abrams, was about what I used to do. And so I made 60 hours of kid movies, just garbage. I made one movie actually called Beach Blanket Blintzes, and it was about a 50-foot blintz that turned people into sour cream. I'm not kidding. I did that at 16 years old, and people came to see it, and 300 people, and it bombed. It was the worst thing ever made. It got like King Kong on top of the Empire State Building, and then it was shot down and the blintz dies. And then I was doing comedy at 17. I started doing musical comedy, and I won a radio contest in Philadelphia because I moved there when I was, I don't know when, when I was my senior year of high school. And then I had an affinity for show business. I didn't understand it. I went for 6 months, I went pre-med at Temple University, and I couldn't take chemistry. I couldn't take biology. I just had no interest, and I was dumb. I mean, for me, iron is Fe. That's all I knew. And potassium, I would remember K, that's potassium. That's it. That's the chart. And then I really did try for a couple months because I wanted to be a pediatric surgeon, oddly enough, or wonderfully enough. And then I took some elective courses in the film department at Temple University in Philly. And I just loved it. And I went to film school, and I actually won a Student Academy Award for a documentary I made. And the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences flew me to LA, and I met Spielberg, and on the same trip I met Woody Allen and all these people. And I got this award for a documentary I made about my nephew who actually had his face reconstructed. And it's an 11-minute documentary, and he narrated it as a child because he had it done when he was 6, 7 years old. Serious documentary. And then I was also doing sketch comedy and improv, like Whose Line kind of stuff at the Groundlings in I also did the Groundlings, but before I got to Los Angeles, I was doing it in Philadelphia at the University of Pennsylvania. I was doing 5 things at once, none of them well. And then when I moved to LA, I went up at the Comedy Store. I know you have one in London, but this was the one that Richard Pryor was at. And there's a big documentary about it, a series that I'm in right now. And it has everybody in it, Dave Chappelle and Bill Burr and Richard and all of the legendary comedians. And I went there, and for 8 years, I was like, I paid dues. I hosted. Eddie Murphy worked out his movie Raw, his concert film. And I just knew everybody and lived through that, and then did some sitcom parts and did a Richard Pryor movie, and then got on some show on CBS and was fired. It was a national show in the States, but I was fired because they said I was too hot for morning TV. And then I landed a part on Full House. They fired a gentleman, which I wish hadn't happened, but I got the job to work with John Stamos and Dave Coulier for 30 years. And then I've been directing things for years also, never stopped directing, directed like 6 movies. And one of them I'm very proud of, which was called Dirty Work. That was with Norm Macdonald and Artie Lang, and cameos. It was Chris Farley's last movie. Chevy Chase was in it, Adam Sandler, a lot of cameos. When we're planning on doing a sequel, Norm and I are going to put it together. So it's been interesting. I never thought, I just saw Evolve on the screen. I never thought I would evolve into someone who's just in show business.
Yeah.
So, I'm sorry the answer was so long. I want to talk to people. I feel bad.
Don't feel bad.
But Jews can talk. Boy, can Jews talk.
Yeah. As much as I'd love to hog the whole conversation, I probably shouldn't. So let's go to the first audience question from Carrie.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Just wanted to say before I ask my question that I don't know if you watched before. I was telling my story about university and growing up with ADHD. Full House and Fuller House, I literally clicked and got into it my first or second year. I literally finished season 8, I think it was season 8, as soon as Fuller House aired on Netflix. I was like, this is such good coincidence. I can't believe this is happening. And it's absolutely amazing show. I'm glad to have this honor to meet you.
I'm honored as well. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it got me through some difficult times, especially like when you struggle with ADHD. But my question is, you briefly mentioned a minute ago that how you got the job. But how was the process? Like, how did you get the role of Danny Tanner?
Well, interestingly enough, he was not called, it was the Winchester family originally in the original pilot. But even the producer doesn't remember that. But I read the script and they changed it to Tanner. And another gentleman had the part and had shot the pilot with Dave and John.
Yeah, I think I saw that they actually released the entire episode.
I'm really upset about that. I always think that's wrong to do. It seems very
no, it takes away the magic, doesn't it?
It's just rude, and it's rude to
much
him.
Better anyway.
Well, that's sweet. That's sweet.
Like, I watched it. I was like, nah, you can't replace Bob Saget.
Well, in retrospect, but he was a sweet guy, and I thought he did a good job. So I was like, why do they want to replace this guy? And I have guilt because I'm Jewish, so I have it about it. But I also was very fortunate because I'd been fired from a show, as I was saying, on CBS, and I got this show. And I was doing the other show, the CBS show at Disneyland in Los Angeles. From New York, they flew us. That's where the show was originally out of, that morning show that I was on.
Right.
And then I screen tested with Dave Coulier, who I'd known for 10 years. He slept on my couch.
Absolutely.
He's adorable. He's a sweetheart. And so fun. Exactly. The moose and I never liked the woodchuck. I
heard the dog chewed the original.
Yeah, the dog ate the face. Dave's on my podcast, and it's a little bit, it's PG-17, but you guys are all fine. But we talked about the things we used to do, and he's a hilarious, wonderful guy. And then I became friends with John Stamos because we just started to do it, and we became like an extended family. We really, I'll get a text in the morning. All of a sudden, it's from almost all of the cast. Hey, want to do this thing for me? And absolutely, whatever you want. Jody. Jody is Stephanie. But then I don't think they should have put that pilot on the DVD set. But sometimes, I don't know, people want to see behind the scenes. But I got the job, and then the pilot ABC was excited about it, and it didn't do well for a long time. We were on against Seinfeld in the States, and it didn't do well. And neither did Seinfeld at the time. It took us both about 2 years to find our mojo and to figure out what our shows were. And then they moved us in America over to what's called TGIF. So it was Thank God It's Friday. And it was us at 8:00, and then Family Matters, Step by Step, the Hogans with Jason Bateman as a kid, and sometimes Perfect Strangers. But those were the shows. And it was
all good shows last in the 80s and 90s. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah,
all good shows in the 90s.
I just did an interview that'll be on in the coming year for CNN that'll be shown around the world about sitcoms, the history of sitcom. And I talked really about a lot. I talked for hours, which I can do, about Full House and about family sitcom and the value of it. And you're saying how it got you through a time. And a lot of people, I've met a lot of people that have said, because I was a single dad and I'd lost my wife, and that was John Stamos' sister in the show. And a lot of the show dealt with that. It would come back, I miss mom. And I talked to a lot of people, young ladies that came up and said, I lost my mom, and my dad and I would watch this show together, and it meant so much to us. And I'm a guy that always had like an edgy comedic bent, and here I was playing a guy who hugged a lot and was a clean freak, which I kind of am now. This is my hand sanitizer. It's industrial. But it's, I just wanted to be part of, like the Odd Couple was Felix and Oscar, and Felix was very neurotic. Everyone on sitcoms is Jewish, no matter what nationality or race. There's a timing. Well, actually, that's not true, because a lot of Jewish shows now wish that they were of African descent. So they want to, because there's a timing in Black comedy that is, to me, those are my favorite comedians, or the comedians that I look up to, was Richard Pryor and Eddie Murphy and Chris Rock, and Dave Chappelle is a dear friend. So I feel like now, it used to be that Jewish people were in the minority because the world, especially in the United States, was quite different. You guys were way ahead of a curve on that, but you're still, humanity has a long way to go. But anyway, and then Fuller House happened 20 years later.
Yeah, I jumped on that wagon as soon as it aired, like binged it in a day.
Well, I'm glad it helped you. I'm glad it made you, it's just a feel-good show, I think.
It is. And I cried in the finale. I'm not going to spoil anything in case people want to watch it, but oh my God. I
did too. I really cried. I've become a sap. Here I am when I do stand-up. I'm an edgy person. Sounds like there's a train outside. I think a train just went by. I don't live anywhere near a train. But yeah, it's an emotional thing when you love people, even if the context is family entertainment.
Yeah.
I hope that answered.
Yeah, it definitely did. Sorry. Yeah.
No worries.
Yeah. I don't know if you want to. No, I don't.
Yeah, did you have something else you wanted to ask? Is there anything else you wanted to know?
I mean, it depends. Do you want to go to the next person?
Okay, sure. So, speaking of Full House,
it was very nice talking to you, though. Thank you.
No, it was lovely talking to you too.
You too. All the best.
So, speaking of Full House, the next question is from Carrie's brother, Samuel.
Yeah.
Hey, Samuel, are you in a room near Carrie?
I'm across the hall.
That's hilarious. How are you?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
I'm okay. Is it infuriating, the quarantine of it all?
Yeah, and just schoolwork and everything.
Well, if I can help, I have no literacy whatsoever.
I hope you'd be a very good help. But my with that very, very nice response that you gave earlier, you mentioned that Fuller House aired 20 years after the original show, and the cast, you became like an extended family.
Mm-hmm.
What was it like to see, like, what was it like to go back and to reprise your role as Danny Turner after 20 long years? And what was it like to see your fellow co-stars just grow up, especially like the ones who played your children, and just like, how did that feel to see? Yeah.
It was emotional. I remember when I first went to the offices and they said, "We're building the set, go take a look at it." And it was on the same set where we did the last 4 years of the series. We were on the Sony lot, which is used to be MGM, for the first 4 years. And then the second 4 years, we were at Warner Brothers. And after we left, Friends came in. So they got the benefit of our amazing dressing rooms that they built because we were in success as Full House had stopped. And so they put us back on stage 24, where we did the last 4 years of the show for Fuller House. And when I first saw the set, I started crying, because it doesn't happen in your life. It would be like going back to your school and spending 6 years there again.
Yeah,
it was strange, because for Dave, John, and myself and Lori, it was a play group, and we were with the kids, and we all played, and then we had stories to tell, but there was a lot of love there. So it was really emotional, And I remember telling the set designer, I asked the producer to please convey that they didn't leave enough space for people to walk. When they walked off the set or up the stairs, there was nowhere to stand. There was a wall. And I went, guys, you got to build like a reservoir, like an extra hallway. That's my contribution to the reboot. But in truth, the entire cast never stopped talking to each other for 20 years. We saw each other once or twice a year at dinners. So we always saw each other. John had parties. I would invite everybody to dinner. I mean, we were dear friends forever. And I stayed close with Mary Kate and Ashley. When I'm in New York, I see them as often as I can. And I have a lot of love, I guess that's why without even knowing it, I was meant to play the part of a guy who just loves everybody and tries to glue the family together. Not literally, because you shouldn't do that, because crazy glue can rip skin off. But it was a pretty wonderful experience. And we came in, the older cast came in, they called us the legacy cast. So it was like, being in a sci-fi movie, like where you're in the capsule for 1,000 years and they open the decompression chamber and smoke comes out. That was us. It was like, hello, we're back this week. And so it was really a wonderful experience, and it's loved worldwide, and so is the reboot on Netflix. So it's a nice feeling. It's a nice feeling to contribute something nice that has some, even though it's a two-dimensional kind of life, they're not real characters like you would watch on some things. I mean, in many ways, Stranger Things is more real than Fuller House. Just the heightened reality of what our show was. But the purity of loving your family, whatever that family is, however they're thrown together, that's the theme that's shown through. And that's what I'm really proud of.
Yeah. Because obviously the show did have quite a positive effect on young people, and like that sort of generation, like the 90s millennials sort of era, like my sister. Yeah. And it's just really nice to see like these old shows all coming back, and just the nostalgia for so many people.
Especially now, I think, people have always wanted to go back to what they thought was a kinder, gentler time. And you'd watch television shows that took you back to a kinder, gentler time. But when you go back to the 50s and you see what the world was like, whether it's a Cold War going on or different things, those shows were meant to gloss over the pain of the day then. And so a lot of shows were made, like Happy Days, 20 years after the time is set in the show. And that's why we see so many shows and movies and shows, especially right now, that are set in the 20s and 30s and or the future. A lot of things are not set in present day, because 2020 is a year we're going to be seeing a lot of product about it. A lot of the arts are going to represent this 2020, 2021 incredibly difficult world time. But I think a lot of us need the escape, and I relish that myself. I watch a lot of shows that are either things that I loved in the past or great comedy things. I know Borat 2 is out any minute, so none of you should watch that, apparently. Probably shouldn't plug it. But go back and watch all Monty Python, because I worship Monty Python. And a lot of the stuff that was said on there is about what's happening right now with politics and the world and the human condition.
Yeah. We've got a show that's recently been brought back from the 80s that's called Spitting Image. It might have heard.
Of course.
Yeah.
We did it here in the US as well. We did an American version, but I watched the British version.
And that's recently come back. And it's just really funny to see like slapstick versions of all these political figures and just taking the mickey out of them.
Do you deal with our political figures as well? You have to, right?
I mean, one of the figurehead puppets in the new show is Donald Trump. So
he gets a lot of press. So there's no way not to deal.
We've had Nancy Pelosi as well. We've had a couple others.
We're quite a soap opera over here, but I know you guys have your stuff as well. It's quite a time in the world, and you guys, no pressure, but you're the future of the planet. No pressure.
No pressure taken.
Right. I really enjoyed talking to you. Thank you, Samuel.
Thank you very much.
So we still have loads of questions, and we're now going to go to Mayan from Israel.
Awesome.
I know, right?
Hi.
How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm good. What city are you in?
I'm from Ramat Ishai. It's in Jezreel Valley, but I'm right now in the UK.
Oh, I see. You're not in the other room.
No, I'm not.
Okay. It'd be great if all of you were like in one house.
Yeah.
There's different rooms.
Yeah. I wanted to ask, I wanted to know how the cast felt like going back to film the TV show without the Olsen twins after so many years. Like, it's a different cast that's been there.
Yeah. Well, we definitely always thought of and missed Ashley and Mary Kate, but I was always of the mindset that, they didn't want to act anymore. And people that I love, people that I know, people that even ask me, if you don't want to do something, you shouldn't do it because your heart won't be in it. And the show did reach out quite a bit and ask them, and I saw them. I would see them in New York, and they said, we don't want to, I had dinner with them separately. I mean, and my oldest daughter is 9 months younger than Ashley and Mary Kate. So I have home videos of them at my house with little dresses with puffy sleeves. And
that's so cute.
Yeah, really cute. And they didn't want to do it. And so what would I do with my own kids? Don't do it. You follow your heart. And if you could, if it's a financial thing, that's different. And that they're so amazing at what they do with their work. That's their love. And so I think if it had been done, maybe I wanted to do the show, the reboot, nobody listened to me, as a movie that got incredibly real. I wanted to suddenly take off the artificial of what are you guys doing kind of attitude, I wanted to make it really real. And, they come home and Danny's drunk and they try to help him through it, but you'd still do it in a way where everybody can see it. It's a PG movie still. And Warner Brothers and Netflix wanted to do it this way. And you don't say no to Netflix because they're the biggest company in the world for this. And it was beautiful that it happened. And so, it was missed to not have the Michelle character, and it became a little more surfacey in general, but it also continued to be a departure from reality for people and take them back to that time. So and I was so impressed, sorry, I'm Jewish, my nose is like its own appendage. But with Candace and Jody and Andrea, to watch them become young women, which I knew them already, but as they're going into their 30s and hit 40 and they become these amazing women that really had good comedy experience and just really good timing. And they ran the show. They were just so good. I was really proud as a friend. And so, yeah, I missed Mary Kate and Ashley, but personally, I would get to see them when it's the right timing for us. But real friends, I'm sure that you'll find out, all of you will find out as you get older, sometimes you don't see a friend for 2 years, and then, which is kind of impossible to believe. But then when you see them, it's like you pick up the sentence that you finished the last time. You already know that you're close. So there's no problem.
That's amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Be well. Baruch Hashem.
Amen.
So the next question is from Louis, who,
Hi, Bob.
Yeah.
Hi.
How are you?
How's it going?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm good. So who are our grandparents?
Who are our grandparents?
We look related. I mean, you look like you know,
I've got some blue squares I can't get rid of. I've been trying to like dim my screen, but
that's
I am looking at you.
the non-reflective glasses. That's the next
Oh,
step.
I bought those anyway. My question is, you've said you were heavily influenced by British comedy and described some of your inspirations as the likes of Benny Hill, Monty Python, Peter Sellers. What did you learn from these classic British comedians? And are there any current British comedians or even Scottish comedians that you're a fan of today?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I love, Craig Ferguson is a friend of mine, and I was actually at his house 2 years ago, and we're dear friends. But as far as, I'm very close with, well, Jimmy Carr is a friend who I find very funny because we both do the same kind of irreverent stuff. He pushes the envelope. Well, I guess I push the envelope also. I grew up, when I was on that show on CBS, I got to interview Benny Hill. So here I was, I'm 28 years old, and I'm spending 2 hours with Benny Hill. And he just made me laugh, you know? And it was the kind of comedy that it was like silent movie comedy, a lot of that. And they would play that music, and he'd have that little old guy, and he'd hit him, and a lot of ladies, and all that burlesque kind of vaudeville comedy that eventually found its way to America. I mean, all of our comedy is based from London, from England, from Scotland, you know, period. Monty Python was a huge influence for me. When I was in film school and I saw Holy Grail, I'd already been watching, and now for something completely different, I'd already been watching every Monty Python's Flying Circus. I started watching it when I was a teenager, and I'm friends with Eric Idle. I mean, I get to be friends with Eric, who wrote Always Look on the Bright Side of Life from Life of Brian, which is a big recommendation. And I have an affinity for whoever the funniest people are, because they're a gift. The funniest people are present, you know? And so there's a lot of comedians that I look at today. I mean, I'm a fan of Ricky Gervais, and I'm a fan of Stephen Merchant, and all the people that come out of that office time when all the original shows came from London and then were spun off in America. All in the Family, one of the biggest shows of all time by Norman Lear, was out of London. It was a takeoff of a brilliant London sitcom, and Sanford and Son was a big show that was Tiptoe and Son in London. Comedy's roots are British, and when you look at Harvard, they have the Harvard Lampoon, and a lot of those writers became part of Saturday Night Live. But at the same time, Oxford had its comedy Lampoon. I believe it's the Oxford Lampoon. I don't know. Does anyone know? But that's the super smart group that would do a parody and a send-up. And then Monty Python, I was talking with Eric once, and I went, so you're all attorneys, right? He says, what are you talking about? I shouldn't do the accent. Sorry, I'm not good at it. He said, no. And he regarded all of Monty Python as just a bunch of, you know, he was self-effacing, you know, he was saying what buffoons, but I mean, I worshiped every one of them. And Peter Sellers is a reason that anybody wanted to do comedy. If you ever, all of you have a chance to see Dr. Strangelove, or I mean, his work, all the Pink Panther movies, obviously, but the early work, I believe it was called The Goon Show, and Peter Cook and Dudley Moore, they were all of the same. Great comedy minds often form in clusters and come up at the same time. So yeah, British comedy influenced me beyond. So many people I'm drawing a blank on. Billy Connolly, right? Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
Help me as much as you can. Help me more. Billy's, I mean, he's brilliant. Eddie Izzard is just, it's breathtaking how his mind works. I've always
got Kevin Bridges as well, who's one of the current Scottish comedians.
Yeah, I've looked at a bunch of his stuff. Yeah, he's great. He's great. Who else? Tell me more.
Mike Myers does a great Scottish accent.
Mike Myers, yeah. That was Mike Myers you were saying, right? Not Mike Myers in Halloween, the movie Halloween. That's a different Mike Myers. I believe it's Halloween, isn't it? Michael Myers, he was the guy, he's kind of the Jason Friday the 13th in the movie Halloween.
I think it's the Mike Myers from Austin Powers and
Yeah.
Shrek.
I'm well aware. I was just saying there's also a murderer in horror movies named Michael Myers, I believe. But Mike Myers, yeah, he came Wayne's World, and he was from Saturday Night Live, and obviously hugely influenced by Peter Sellers, and so talented.
Thanks very much.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Are you a comedy person? Are you going to want to do comedy? Writing? You're a writer?
I'm not funny at all.
I think you might be.
I'm an engineer. I do maths.
So you're an engineer. You're going to be an engineer.
I am an engineer. Yeah.
Oh, you're an engineer. What railroad?
This is industrial. This is manufacturing.
No, I know. I'm my puns are not good. I'm not up to snuff.
Sorry, it's the humor. Sorry.
No, it would be the same humor. I would get no response in any language. Trust me. But engineering is a wonderful thing. So you can save the world. Do something. Help us with environmental issues, right?
That's the plan. Remove the plastic.
Thank you. I'm converting right now. Not from Judaism.
That's good.
All the best. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Take care.
You too. Thank you.
Our next question is from Gaia.
Hi.
Hi, Gaia.
First of all, I just wanted to say I'm a really big fan of you and Full House and Fuller House. I've watched it over 19 times over.
Oh my God. Thank you.
My question is it true that your new wife let you take one night off of your honeymoon to perform in the West End? And what's the difference about performing in front of a British audience, and did you have to change your material for a British audience?
It's interesting. I tried not to change it, but I did, because here was my very first time performing in London, and I've always wanted to. And the Leicester Square Theatre is just this beautiful small space that's just, and the audience was so wonderful. And it was the very start of our honeymoon. And it was just because we're going to be in London, honey, can I just perform one night? And yes, and it was a sold out show. And there was one piece of material that I did that I think I won't even talk about what it was, but I did cross some boundaries that I wasn't aware were sensitive, and they're sensitive everywhere now. And it was, comedians sometimes try to do something that goes against, the edge, that really it's, oh my God, I can't believe they said that. You just watch a lot of comedians, you're like, what was that? And I did one of those, and I heard from someone, I'm not sure if it was a review, might have been a review. And it was a really nice review, except for this one moment that they mentioned, and they were right. And, because I defer to, I've always looked up to British people. I just always have. And I have a bunch of friends and whatever. And I took it out of any repertoire material right away. It was like, I'm always open to learning and improving something, because we're in a cancel culture right now. So you can't, the far left is stopping you from saying stuff, and the far right, well, we know where they are, but I guess we need the extremes to somehow arrive to the middle, but we're not in a peaceful place with it right now, especially over in the United States. But yeah, I just loved the show so much. And my wife knew it would make the honeymoon all that much sweeter. And so after performing in the West End, it was a time when I know people still, even though there's a curfew, still go out right now. And that's dangerous without masks, because I'm a believer in the mask until we get this thing under control. But we went out and just hung out. I mean, I love it. I've had some of my best times. I took all three of my daughters once. I was divorced for 23 years before I got married again. And And it was the last time I had been in London was with my 3 daughters. And we spent a week there when they were younger. And I just remember I was in Hyde Park and all of a sudden it started hailing in the middle of the day. I'm like, what? What is this? We don't have this.
Yeah, it sounds about right.
Right. So we hid underneath a bus stop and waited for a cab. But it was so, I just love it. First thing I did when I went back with my wife, excuse me, I've got to drink some water. I don't know why my throat's, I took a Claritin. Jewish people get up with allergies, it's in the Bible, I believe. But I took her right to the Peter Pan statue in Hyde Park, which of course is in the movie Hook when Robin Williams sees the statue. I don't remember, but it's in there. Anyway, it was beautiful performing there. I can't wait to come back. And you'll all be a little older, so you'll be able to get in. And I'll be a little less dirty, I think.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. You're very sweet. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
The next question is from my own sister.
In the other room?
No, she's actually like halfway across the country at university. Otherwise,
awesome.
Yeah.
Hiya. Nice to see you, and nice to see you, Abby. So my is
and Abby, it's nice to see you. Bob, hi. It's so good to see you.
So my question
what
is,
university? What part? Where are you, Hannah?
I'm up in Nottingham at the moment.
Oh, that's right. I heard that before we started. So, are there Robin Hood things? Are there monuments for the sheriff?
They also have like a town crier who like dresses up and does the whole Robin Hood thing. It's a bit weird, but it's part of it.
That's hilarious. There's a lot of town criers here. People are just in the street crying.
Fair enough.
There's no answer. Sorry.
I don't blame them.
Right.
So my question is about your new podcast. So was it something that had been in the pipeline for a long time, or was it something that you were inspired to start over lockdown?
It was not because of lockdown. I had in 2019, I was on tour and I was hitting it pretty hard and was ready to do a new special. And I was working everywhere, a lot of theaters, going all over the place. And I just felt in America a lot of tension in the room. And I would tour the South and I get a very diverse audience. I get younger people that would know me from those shows, and I get older people or from Entourage, a lot of single guys that are, think that's what I'm like. And just from stand up and from all the different stuff I've done. So the audience is very diverse and racially very diverse. And I had people arguing with each other in the audience. And I would, it many shows, and I would get control of it because I like to work the room. I do it not unlike Jimmy Carr does it in that kind of style, but then I do material, not unlike Jimmy in some ways. And so I just wanted to do this. It just came out of me. Before this, we felt in the United States, and I think it had a lot to do with our leaders, we were separated. And some people were waiting for the separation, were happy with it. And a lot of people were going, why are we being separated? And why are we disenfranchised? And why are we profiled? And all those things. So I made a deal in 2019 to do it. So that's pre-quarantine, hey, there's a disease called COVID. Coronavirus comes from, we don't know anything. So I was getting ready to go in January. And then in February, I started recording it in studio. I did 2 episodes in studio. And then they put lockdown happened. And I had to cancel going to Canada. And Canada was mad at me. The country was mad because I was supposed to go, but I was supposed to go to Vancouver first and then go to Calgary and then you just keep touring. But then they said, we think you should not go. And Vancouver at first was upset, but then the next day they shut everything down. And Calgary, I would have been stuck in Canada for weeks to get back to the US because of quarantine and all the gigs shut down. So they brought the podcast Word to my home. It's behind me in another room, and I record out of there on Zoom with some wonderful guests from all over the world, people that I adore. And I just had Hamish and Andy on, who are very popular in Australia. They're the #1 comedy podcast gentlemen, fun gentlemen in Oz. So I just started doing it, and it was something that allowed me to communicate with people and try to make people's life a little bit better, you know, and do my naughty sense of humor sometimes and other times not, you know. I'm a chameleon when it comes to that. But yeah, I started that before the lockdown, but the timing was very surreal because a couple weeks later, everybody was in all this pain.
No, it's nice to see that people sort of have still been able to follow things through, even with the massively changing circumstances at the moment.
Yeah. And a few television shows are up and running, and I know a few of yours are up and running. I guess like The Voice is back, I would think there, or I don't know. Do you or America's Got Talent? No, you don't have America's Got Talent. America does not have talent. Is there a British version of that show?
Yeah, Britain's Got Talent. I think it came first, actually.
Of course it did.
That was back and socially distanced. Yeah.
And Simon Cowell and Sir Tom Jones, what show are they on?
I think they're on different ones. I think Simon Cowell does the Britain's Got Talent, and then Sir Tom does he does The Voice. I haven't seen that recently.
There you go. Yeah, everything we have comes from you guys. It happens quite often. And not only that, but if you look at all of television in general and all the streaming services, I will go to a show if it's a British show at this point. So I'm sure you're seeing it also. You're going, wait a minute. Everybody on Netflix now it's a lot of British actors and actresses, and it's quite refreshing. And the level of acting is it's exceptional, because that's where acting came from. So thank you. Hope everything goes well in college. Are you able to go to classes, or is it all done Zoom-y kind of thing?
At the moment, it's all online, but hoping to get some real things happening soon, but not sure. Depends what.
Right. Yeah, we need a vaccine. We need one, and people need to take it. There's people in America, well, some people won't take it because they don't believe in science.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the people that don't believe in science, their favorite movies are the Avengers and the Matrix and Star Wars movies. So that's science. I mean, take the shot. Anyway.
Difficult to make, yeah.
I don't understand.
I don't understand it either.
No. Well, thank you, and all the best. And I hope you get back to classes when it's safe, and
thank you.
Get to be with people. Get to be with people again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next question is from Sydney, and we still have loads more questions, by the way.
Hi.
I'll answer shorter. Hi.
Hi. So as if the pandemic wasn't enough, there seems to be a lot going on in America right now. The tragic death of George Floyd, forest fires, flooding, and of course you have a big controversial presidential election coming up.
Mm-hmm.
For generations, you've been known as America's dad. So Bob, can you tell us what the hell is going on?
Yeah. People don't know how to have a discourse. They don't know how to have opposing opinions right now in this country and be able to discuss them and be able to go, no, don't you see that if we do this, then these radical groups will take over. And then the other side goes, but these radical groups will take over. And a lot of it is, it fuels itself. Like the radical groups wouldn't have the press, wouldn't have the acknowledgement if the press didn't give it to them. So the world that we're in is so, you're aware of everything we're going through because of what's happened with communication. I mean, it's pretty, the internet, it's going to be much more in the years to come, but it doesn't help us. It doesn't serve us. Did I lose her? Is she still there?
No, I'm here. I'm here.
Oh, okay, good. Sorry. But I was just going to say that, we have a debate tonight, our last and final debate, because the second one got canceled because of hissy fits. So this one is going to happen, and my wife and I are going to watch it. And it's just very painful and very difficult. And even when the election is over here, no matter what happens, there's a lot of unrest. And so Danny Tanner you can't get people to hug in a pandemic unless they've just gotten tested and then they have masks on, then they can hug. So Danny Tanner would, of course, have everybody wearing masks and sanitizing, which a lot of people don't want to do, which is insane. And then he would also try to put out love. And I guess maybe the answer would be we need like a court jester like Joey Gladstone to talk to our world leaders. I would love to watch the presidential debate tonight, and all of a sudden Dave Coulier pops in and does Bullwinkle impressions. I mean, we could sure use an outlet, because you go to Instagram, you go to TikTok, you go to YouTube, you go to Twitter, and you get your parodies of everything, and it kind of takes you out of it. That's where social media can help you, where the chat shows will have people on and make fun of it, and gives you an opportunity to laugh at it all. Yeah, you want to be careful not to cut to someone in the bathroom. Okay, but someone just blocked my screen. But yeah, I just think that Elvis Costello, who I love so much, had a song, what's so funny about peace, love, and understanding? Because we're in such a cynical time and such an angry time. And peace, love, and understanding, if John Lennon was alive and the Beatles were singing All You Need Is Love, these days people go, yeah, right. Don't take my gun, It's just, we need it. We need it. And you guys are the people, my kids and their kids, because humankind's not going anywhere. We can make sure of that, but we have to move the needle forward. It's really messed up. So thank you for the question. I'm trying. Thanks.
So the next question is from Emma.
Hi.
Hi, Emma. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Really good. Thanks.
Good. So how did you get to play the role and play the voice of future Ted Mosby in How I Met Your Mother? Was it just a voiceover, or were you actually on set with the cast? And were you disappointed to not be in the last episode?
That's I have all the answers already. It was really interesting. And actually, if you on my podcast, I had a conversation with Josh Radnor, and we talked about this because we're friends. I was doing a play in New York called Privilege about a corrupt white collar businessman who was about to go to jail. And it was written by Paul Weitz, who wrote the movie version of About a Boy. And he's a really talented writer and director. And so I did this play. I get a phone call from someone, the mother of one of my kids' friends, who I knew from school, Pam Fryman, and she is a great director, and she's one of the exec producers of this new show that was going to be made called How I Met Your Mother. And she called me and said, okay, we have a new show, and this guy, Josh Radnor, is in it, and it's about these people trying to make their way through their late 20s and 30s. And I think that you'd be right, and so do the producers, Craig and oh God in heaven, help me. I'm looking at his face. He's yelling at me. And Carter, he was yelling at me in my head. Craig and Carter are so brilliant. They wrote the whole series, and I'll talk about the last episode also because of their choice. And she said, we'd like you to be the older Ted Mosby. I said, why can't this actor Josh Radnor do that? She said, we just see him having a more mature voice. And I said, so cigarettes and alcohol, is that what you think he needs to get in order to have 20 years of deeper voice? She said, well, also you have that fatherly voice, and you're a known voice, and you're a welcome. People recognize your voice, and you're talking to your kids in the future. So, well, let me read it. And I read it, and I fell in love with it. It felt like a love letter to relationships and unrequited love, and someone always looking for love. And I always love those romantic comedies. You've Got Mail and I mean, any of them. I mean, I could turn on Love Actually and just watch it all day. That's my go-to. If I'm hurting and it's on, I'm like, oh, good. I get to see Liam Neeson's son playing the drums, but he's not really playing. I can't wait to see that cutaway. So I did the pilot. I went into a recording studio in New York and did it. And then they said, we'd love you to do it. And then I went to 20th Century Fox every week. I would read the script. I would watch the episode, a rough cut. It wasn't the final cut. And I'd go on set and visit everybody. I knew Allison Hannigan because she used to be my babysitter when she was 16 for my daughters. I knew Neil Patrick Harris because he was on Doogie Howser when I was on Full House. So we would meet each other when he was 10 at the ABC conferences, the network that made us. And the other people I had mutual friends with, Jason and Kobe. And it was just really a weird meant to be kind of thing. So I would really spend time on it. It would be like 6 hours on the soundstage where they would do, major movies and television shows, ADR, they call it, but it's the looping where they would, or narration for things. And I would watch it and you'd hear the 3 beeps, but I had to be Ted because I wanted to be in the momentum of the show. So I had the vibe of the actors. So I would listen to Ted talking and he would say, and Josh would say something live and he would go like, I don't know what to do. And then you go to my voice. And then I realized, so I took his cadence. I would take, I was really in it in my mind. And then there were days where the beginning of the script started off with the narrator and it says, kids, I'm going to start. And so I decided, they said, hey, Bob, they're going to do the table reading on stage. Oh yeah, I'll go over there. So I snuck under the bleachers and then they were going to have the director read the narration. And I just snuck into the chair and just started reading and everybody was like, oh, and they applauded and said, now please leave. But I had a real closeness and love for the show. And as for the last episode, and I talked to Josh about this. We talked about it on my podcast just a couple of weeks ago. It was really, some people took issue with how they did the last episode. But I look at it as, I've had a really bittersweet life. I had a lot of loss in my life. And you look at a show like Full House, it's, Danny Tanner had no wife. She passed away. So things happen. And the show, one of its trademarks that people loved so much is every episode was tied up in a bow. It was a romantic comedy. And so I wish it would have been a longer episode, the last episode, but I loved, and I knew that Josh was going to narrate the last episode and I knew what it was going to be. And I went, wow. I was kind of blown away by it, to be honest with you. But I think so many people expected comedy and romance to prevail that they were just so sad and disappointed. But the ending of any show, you look how Seinfeld ended, you look at a lot of shows that have a closure episode. It's not often, you don't always have it doesn't feel right a lot of times, that last episode. But this one, Craig and Carter are artists, they're writers. And so they wanted to end it the way they wanted to. And I think that's remarkable. But if you get the DVD set of How I Met Your Mother, they have the last episode with me narrating it. So you do get to hear me say on the very last episode, and that, kids, is the story of How I Met Your Mother for the last time. But Josh and I were very close, not very close, but we went out to dinner a few times and I saw him in a play in New York and we really liked each other. And it really helped. It helped me not feel like it was weird that he didn't do it. I asked him, did you wish you would have done the narration? He said, I would have liked the money. But then we were out to dinner and we were both single for a long time. And there was a young lady that came over that was 10 years older than him and 10 years younger than me. And she was talking to both of us. And I said, which version of Ted Mosby do you like better? The younger one or the older one? That was my big joke. And she walked away, which most people do when I talk. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
So we have a question from Bradley.
Hi.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. You?
Are you okay? Quarantine getting to you? Are you all right?
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, I think I'm okay too. I talk about my wife a lot, but I didn't show her. This is my wife. She's got a belly ring, so she's very progressive.
So thankfully, whilst in lockdown, we've had Netflix, Amazon, and other streaming services. What have you been binge watching during lockdown? What shows would you recommend? I hear you're a big fan of Ted Lasso, which of course is based on an English soccer team.
I love Ted Lasso so much. It is one of my favorite things I've ever seen at this moment because it's one of the few things that's positive, that's being put out, that's positive in a really smart way. And Jason Sudeikis is just so good. He's just remarkable, and that cast they're amazing. And for him to be a fish out of water and to be in a place and to have a positive cheerleader attitude and to pull them through it is just really, I just find it to be a beautifully done show. So I recommend that really highly to everybody. And then I watch, Euphoria, and that's a whole different thing that takes me to a darker place. And then on Apple, I was also watching Brave New World, which I liked quite a lot, although it's pretty upsetting. And also takes you to what could our future get to be, something like that. There's a lot of sci-fi shows that take you to a place of how do we get through this, and we don't want to become that. That's what a lot of science fiction does, is the human condition continues to be a battle everywhere. Lighter shows like Schitt's Creek is something that we did all 6 years as quickly as possible. Like some people were saying earlier, to watch all of Fuller House in a quick binge. But that show really was a love letter also to people. But there's a lot of shows I've been watching. I've been watching, oh God, what's it called? I'm gonna look it up because I keep forgetting the name of it. I don't know why. It's a brilliant show. Do you have HBO Max there?
I don't think we do, no.
You don't, but I'm sure you get this show. You have to get it. It's it's all over the world. It's Lovecraft Country. Are you familiar with that? When you see it, when it comes out, it's brought to you. It's made by both Jordan Peele, who did Get Out, and also J.J. Abrams, who's done a great deal of the great stuff. And it's they're exec producers of this show, and it's quite amazing. I won't even talk about it, but it's upsetting and it's poignant, and it deals with racial injustice and magic and mysticism in the 20s in the United States. I've been watching so many British shows. Right now we're watching. It's on Apple TV also. It's an Israeli show. Oh, come on, Bob, you can do this. It's someone told me the name of it. It's Tehran. I think that's the name of it. Is that the name of it? Does anybody know? It's Apple TV. Is anybody there? Can you hear me? I've had no audio right now from anybody.
We can hear you. Everyone's muted.
Oh, maybe let them all talk. I don't know. I'm really lonely. Let me see, Apple TV, because I'm just doing, it must be Tehran. I watched do you have Apple TV there? You must have it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. It's a stupid question. I ask really dumb questions. Okay. It's here we go. Oh, they got a new Bruce Springsteen thing. Yeah, it's Tehran, and it's really good. It's done by the people that did Fauda. So, and it stars her, but it's not the same actress as Ex Machina and Lara Croft, but she looks like her. But it's a really, really powerful show, and it deals with the Mossad, and it has a feeling, and the Tehran, It's, it has a feeling like I don't know why. What's the most famous with this is a great interview. Boy, I really got good at this point. It's with My So-Called Life. She starred in that. Who starred in My So-Called Life? You love her. You all love her. She played Carrie on the CIA show, the big CIA show, Homeland. You watched Homeland, right?
I haven't personally watched it. It's on my list, but I haven't watched
But
it.
but of course you have it. And I think it's based on an Israeli show, I'm pretty sure. But it's a remarkable show. That's one of the first things we watched also, because it was about insanity. We'd watch the news, get so upset, and then watch a show that was more upsetting to calm down. So that's what I've been doing.
Yeah.
This is the one moment in our Zoom where my brain went blank. I apologize. I'm back now.
Okay, we have our last audience question from Greg. And then back to
Oh, awesome.
Hi, Bob.
Hi, Greg. How's it going?
It's going really good. Thank you. Thank you very
Good.
much for your interview. I'm honored to have the last question.
Mutual.
Before I go on to that, I'll say I really resonated with your comment right at the start where you said everyone's got a podcast.
Yeah.
I actually launched my podcast a couple of weeks ago. It's got 20 views.
What's the name of it?
It's called SNL Rapid Review. I do a review of SNL episodes.
Oh, that's fantastic. My friend Bill Burr hosted recently. Did you watch it?
Yeah, it was a really good episode.
It was one of the best they've had in a very long time. Don't you agree?
I gave it a very good review.
He's a dear friend, and we talked about it at length. In fact, a week later, we went out and smoked cigars, and he was saying, "Oh, I didn't get to do this," and he's an important voice. And I know he played Royal Albert Hall, and my friend Mike Binder directed his special that was shot there for Netflix. Bill is just, and the sketches he did are so poignant. They're like Saturday Night Live used to be when there was social commentary and irony, and people don't understand what parody and satire is, but he did it at a very high level. I love him a great deal. He would be upset if I said that. He would just make fun of me.
So anyway, I was going to ask you about, you come from a very long line of.
3 minutes.
Sorry.
Someone else's Zoom someone's got their Zoom. Someone needs to mute. That always happens. Oh, I have to tell you, I want to hear your question. Let's see Greg on screen, if we could. There we go. I was just because of what just happened on the Zoom. Ray Romano did a thing for my benefit, and he has a piece of material, and he said that what people don't know is that whatever sound you make, that other people hear it. And he said he was on a Zoom and he farted. And then he said, and then he did it again because he figured I'm on Zoom. No one can hear me. And then his friend said, no, when your box lights up, it means people are listening to you. And he went, oh my God. And they recorded the Zoom. So that's kind of the sound we heard was not a fart, but it was just some background audio. Please, Greg, continue. I'm sorry.
So you come from a long line of Jewish comedians. So I'm thinking, Jeff Garlin, as you mentioned, Jeffrey Ross, Seinfeld, Gilbert Gottfried, Mel Brooks, Carl Rayner, Don Rickles, Jerry Lewis. So the list goes on. And I'm just wondering, what do you think it is that draws Jews to comedy? What is that connection? And do you have any advice for aspiring Jewish comics?
Absolutely. My friend Rodney Dangerfield, who was a very well-known comedian, had a couple of big movies. Back to School's the one that I recommend to you guys. Really funny movie. And he used to say that a Jewish person is always running. It's like in World War II, you're running from the border guard. But if you can make the guard in Nazi Germany laugh for 6 minutes, they'll let you pass. That was his metaphor. But there is a survival thing about it. And there is something about being an outsider. That's why you find so many great comedians are outsiders, whether they be Jewish or of African descent or just a different way of, or just were different and lonely or went through hell. I don't know many comedians, no matter where they're from, that didn't go through some kind of hell. And if they didn't, then in their later years, it ends up catching up with them. But you look at someone like George Carlin, who, if you look at any of his stuff, it hasn't changed. The world hasn't changed from the 60s when he was, from Lenny Bruce, when he first started doing counterculture stuff and talking about the man and how everybody is, being faked out and lied to. That's an outsider. And that's not just a rebel for the sake of being a rebel. It's a person who came up the hard way. Richard Pryor, I got to be friends with him. He was raised in a brothel in Peoria, in Ohio, and he had a very tough life. He was, hung out with mobster types and he had drug problems, and he was one of the funniest people that will ever live. And then, you just go through the litany of comedians. They might look like they don't have an issue because they might be like, oh, they're buttoned down and they're cleaning up for television. But the really, really funny people, all the ones I've ever met, are an outsider. And there's a lot of Jewish comedy. It just is that way. And it came from, I think it came from having to move a lot. I moved a lot because my dad was in a supermarket business and I had to move to different cities in the United States. But when you look at the heritage where all of our ancestors were picking up and running away not to be executed, that'll create a strong person and someone who feels alone. And I would find myself, I knew I was funny at 4. Other people may not know even now that I'm funny, but I've talked to a lot of comedians and a lot of them knew when they were really young. And I came up with Jerry Seinfeld. We met at 22, 23 years old, and we had 2 totally different styles of comedy, and yet it's the same thing. It's you can't help but do it. You can't help but take something and maybe take people out of the moment for a second and analyze something that just happened, and it brings people into the moment, and that's what I love about stand-up and about all comedy. When you watch a great comedy, and there are some really, really great comedies, you're appreciative of them. They're just, there's something really special. There's something about what you can, and if it's a heartfelt comedy, if it's a movie, for example, when 9/11 happened, I remember I was watching television, and I know it was on television all through Europe. It was the whole world, right? So that night, all 4 networks all day, the 24 hours of that footage since 6:30 in the morning, and that's all anybody was watching. And I remember Fox Television, not the news network, but television, instead of running that footage, they ran Mrs. Doubtfire. And a lot of people I've talked to went, I watched Mrs. Doubtfire too that night. And that was in the US, that Fox, and I knew the head of it at the time. I thanked him for it because he ran Mrs. Doubtfire, which is about a man that loves his kids, Robin, beautiful Robin, loved his kids so much that he dressed up as a woman to be able to see his kids. And it was comedy oriented, but it had heart to it and that was in the hardest of times, in the worst of conditions. That's why you look at Life is Beautiful, that amazing movie about the Holocaust. That was a comedy for the first half of the movie, and how to get the little boy to not see the horror and make it as though it's a story, so he doesn't have to go there emotionally with the horror of it. So I hate to equate comedy to horror, but it sure gets me through it. And my dad always had a gallows sense of humor. Whenever someone passed away, my dad would be the person that would make a joke, even his own daughter. And someone came up to him at the Shiva, and Shiva in English means delicatessen, because they bring the meats right in. but I'm standing next to my dad and somebody came over and said, "Oh my God, we've lost her. I don't know what we're going to do. I don't know how I'm going to get through it." And my dad's like, "Oh, I know how you feel. You know, it's yeah. Oh yeah. I'm really sorry for you." And it's his child. So there was something about that sarcasm, and not in a mean way, but it's something that it can help you survive. I think comedy can help you survive. So that's why I treasure stand-ups, and a lot of Jewish stand-ups. You look at what they've done, what they've contributed, Woody Allen, and I mean, it just goes on and on. Neil Simon as a writer, and Mel Brooks and Carl Reiner, and what they did, what they contributed. It's monumental, you know, to the world, because all of the movies, what you probably all seen it and didn't even know you've seen some of them, and you would watch, you go, "That's funny," and you know, there's, you know, some movies like Airplane were just so silly, but they went everywhere in every Monty Python movie. I mean, there's no such thing as a bad Monty Python movie. So, and that was all about the political system and religion. They tackled things you're not supposed to talk about. And that's what the great stand-ups do as well.
So these are unprecedented times, and the physical, mental health, and economic impacts may affect us all for some time to come. But do you have any hope for the future, and what positives do you think may come out of this strange time that we live in now?
I have a lot of hopes for the future, and I talk about it with my friends that I respect, and we all talk about it. I'm sitting on a bench with Jeff Ross and Bill Burr and my friend Mike Binder, who directed a lot of things in London. He did a movie called Londinium with Mariel Hemingway, and he's just, you know, he wanted to live in London. I want to live in London. When this is over and I'm allowed, I'm flying to London and living there. Well, we'll see how the election goes. That's a good one. I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful because of you guys. I'm hopeful because, look, your basis of what you're doing, your mission statement is kindness. Your mission statement is to do something good for people, to help people through life. Everybody has a hard go. Very few people. I always said nobody gets a free ride except for bus drivers, and they don't get a free ride now. I mean, they're taking their life in their hands if there's buses running. But yeah, I'm hopeful that in the next year or two, you can't move forward without going backward. You can't do great things without pain. And that's from all of the earliest teachings in Judaism. It's the first stuff you read. If anybody goes to the New Testament, boy, that's not a laugh riot. You know, there's no jokes in there. It's hard stuff. But the world, I have to be positive for humanity. I have no choice, and it's because of you guys. I mean, when I was asked to do this, I'm like, wow, what a beautiful mission statement you guys have, and what a great thing you're all doing. And I know you're all going through stuff. You know, even people that go, "I'm okay." I mean, none of us are really okay. I mean, we're not out being with friends. We're not able to. And even if you're a loner, I kind of don't, my life doesn't change that much in quarantine. I like being home. I'm kind of known, so I pick my spots where I want to go. I don't really go to the market. That's really a spoiled brat. But I do think we're gonna definitely get through this time. Yeah. This disease is going to be solved just like all the others. It's just that this was so crazy. No one wanted to stop their lives and didn't want to follow rules to be able to let it stop spreading. And it's like, that's not good enough. You know, don't tell me to wear a mask. I need to give me the vaccine. I want the cure. We're going to have that. And then we've got a lot of human rights stuff to figure out. Yeah. And how do you get rid of hatred? How do you get rid of anti-Semitism? I don't know if you ever do. I don't think you ever do. I think you process it, you talk about it, and then we all need to be protected from hate. We need to somehow diffuse hate. And that's, I don't know womankind's not as flawed as mankind. You know, there's people are programmed, and if they don't have the IQ points, they just believe the rhetoric of what they were taught. And so somehow we have to educate. and we have to help people with mental health issues. I've had a lot of that in my family, and that also doesn't help, especially if one of your leaders has mental health issues.
Yeah.
So we're going to get through this. I know we're going to get through this time, and goodness will prevail. It just is really hard. I mean, we all want it. So there's no one on this Zoom that doesn't want it. Maybe someone watching it after the fact will go, "Oh, I don't want it." Well, sorry, maybe you do. Maybe you just didn't get hugged by your mom or your dad, you know?
Definitely. So finally, the big question. We always ask our guests to nominate and ask another celebrity to be a future guest on our programme and help entertain us all stuck at home. If you have enjoyed tonight's experience, and we very much hope you have, who would you like to nominate tonight? Do you think you might be able to convince another comedian friend to join us?
Yeah, I could talk to. I know a lot of Jewish comedians. Do they have to be Jewish?
No, I don't think all of our guests have been Jewish.
But okay, I would. I was going to ask another question, but it's too PG. I'm going to be a good boy. I have a few people I can suggest that would be great. That are of the Jewish persuasion, and it's very hard to persuade Jewish people to do Zoom calls these days. Yeah, I have a few people.
Amazing.
Maybe Josh Radnor would want to do it. That would be a good one.
That would be amazing. Thank you.
Absolutely. When I retweet this out, I'll send it to Josh and ask him if he would like to be part of it.
That would be amazing. Thank you so much.
I know a lot of Jews.
Jews know a lot of Jews.
Yeah, they do. They somehow find each other because we're all ready, when we get the call to save the world. I don't know. But thank you. I love doing this. This was really nice. You all were so nice. I wish the best for all of you. I hope to see you all when I come back to England, whenever it is, and you can all have a fake ID and get into my show.
Definitely. Thank you so much for joining us and inspiring us and giving us so much needed laughter. We've really loved hearing about your career and your experience and getting lots of advice for coping through these crazy times. We wish you well and good luck with all that comes next. Thank you once again. Please stay safe, take care, and we hope to see you again soon in London.
Thank you so much, Abby. I hope to see you all. And when that day comes, when I'm in London, we'll be through this time. We'll all be healthy. So I wish you all a lot of health and all your families a lot of health and a lot of happiness. And we'll get through this. And thank you for doing what you're doing. It's really wonderful.
No, I couldn't do it without people like you.
Oh, you could. You're pretty good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Shalom.
Thank you. And that's it. Thank you for joining us tonight. Thanks to the Shin Shin Im for providing us with fun and games and then keeping us active and healthy. And thank you to Julia for teaching us how to make bath bombs, Jamie for some inspirational acts of kindness, and of course, the brilliant Bob Saget for that wonderful and insightful interview. We hope you have an amazing week. And next week, we'll be having a half-term break, but we hope you have an amazing week and can't wait to see you all on the 5th of November. Until then, stay safe and good night.